Welcome to the Regulation Podcast from the Institute of Regulation. My name is Martial Bou, Chair of the Institute and a regulator myself. On this month's podcast, I'm delighted to welcome three guests, each a regulator and each a winner of one of the Institute of Regulation's inaugural awards for good regulation, which were presented at our annual conference last month. Before we showcase their work and hear about good regulation in practice, let me introduce them. Matt Westmore is Chief Executive of the NHS Health Research Authority, which regulates health and social care research in the UK, protecting the interests of patients and the public. Matt has a research background, including as a professor at the University of Southampton. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Marcel. Great pleasure to be with you.
It's great to have you. Thanks very much. Welcome also to Mary Jervis, who's a group manager at the Information Commissioner's Office. And Mary oversees projects to help small organisations and sole traders to understand information rights laws and put them into practice. Welcome to you too, Mary.
Thanks, Martial. Good to be here.
Thanks. And also Tom Vincent, Deputy Director of Innovation at the Food Standards Agency. And Tom leads the FSA's Innovation Hub, which is responsible for the regulation of novel foods, genetic technology, and innovative products. Sounds interesting. Good to have you here too, Tom.
Hi, Marcel. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks all for joining the podcast, and well done again to you and your teams for winning these awards. I'm going to ask you later for your broader views on good regulation and current regulatory challenges. But first, I'd love to hear about the work that led to your winning these Institute of Regulation prizes. Mary, let's start with you. The ICO won a prize for innovation in regulation, and your team created a tool to help small and medium-sized businesses to make their own privacy notices and better comply with the legal requirements to let people know what information is held on them and what will be done with it. So, Mary, can you tell us a bit more?
Yes, certainly. So we already had resources on our website, which was a standard generic template and explanations on what should go in a good privacy notice. But we felt we were still getting a lot of inquiries. Questions about privacy notice were some of our most common. So we had a bit of a session and we came up with a prototypes stretching it a bit. But just a bit of a rough draft to put before a focus group of small businesses. They gave us feedback and it was valuable because it made us stop in our tracks and change the way we were thinking. We also did surveys so that any drop-down list would be able to be relevant to the sectors that we were creating these privacy notice generator for. So it's really invaluable. Following that, we launched a beta version just on general business to start with. And then in August last year, we launched 6 sector-specific generators. We used an iterative approach, listening to feedback, making changes as we went, which we're still continuing to do, actually. We set ourselves a target to increase views by 20%, and we actually, at the time of submitting our award even, we'd had 105% increase in views to the pages. And we wanted to have 20% conversion to actually, from visiting the page to generating a notice. And we had 53%. So all in all, really good. And 67% said that they were satisfied or very satisfied with it. And
that's fantastic.
67.5% said it reduced legal costs, which is really important in the current climate.
So what I'm hearing there, Mary, is that you helped the people that you regulate to comply. Mm-hmm. And not only did you help them to comply, but you helped them to save money as well. So that's a great thing. So how are you going to develop this in future?
Yeah, what we're looking to do is, first of all, we've got surveys out on the pages to carry on getting feedback. And if there's opportunities to develop further sector-specific generators, we'd like to do that so that we can help more. Because what small businesses want to see is they want to see themselves, not generic, although data protection laws apply and it's principle-based, so the principles are the same for everyone. But they want to see themselves in it.
Sure, of course they do. Okay, well, that's fantastic. So well done. Now, turning to you, Matt, the Health Research Authority won an award for collaboration in regulation. Congratulations to you and your team for that. It was for bringing together the health and social care research sectors, and it led to faster approvals, efficiency, and stronger public involvement. Tell us more about what you did.
Yeah, thanks, Marcel. So probably worth saying up front that whilst Health Research Authority were proud to accept the award, it's obviously and clearly, unequivocally on behalf of all of our partners. This was some partnership working that we were recognised for. And it's for work that we felt was really important as in terms of our partners, and that's because health research is important to all of us. It's important in terms of developing new treatments. It saves lives. It supports our national health services, and it contributes tens of billions of pounds to our economy. But it's also a very sophisticated, complicated, and serious process doing research with and about people. And so it requires approval and oversight from many different regulators across the UK, and is delivered simultaneously at dozens, sometimes hundreds of different research sites across the country. And for too long, research has faced fragmented, duplicative, and inconsistent approvals processes, which basically just prevented research either getting up and running as quickly as it could do, or getting up and running at all. And put simply, delayed health research meant delayed treatments. So we, with our partners, set out to tackle this. We didn't just try to fix our own problems. We worked together at the system. We came together as the UK nations, as regulators, as researchers, as the NHS, with patients and public to tackle those big blockers. We did a number of things. We created a UK-wide single approvals system. We standardised our policies and our expectations from the research community. We eliminated duplication and improved consistency. That's work that's ongoing. So we know that we've still got a lot of work to do, but what we've done so far is working. It's making a real difference. As you said, approvals times are much faster. Duplication is down, and public involvement at every stage of research is up. And it means that it's one of the reasons why the UK is such a fantastic place to do research in the world.
It's amazing. And it sounds like you're putting in place foundations that are going to be around for decades, potentially, working relationships and a methodology that will allow stuff to come through and, as you say, benefit patients.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, and well done to the whole team, because as you said, it's about collaboration, and so everybody needs to play a part. And I'm interested to hear maybe later on some of the other regulators that you've been working with, because obviously that's something that we're really keen on here at the Institute of Regulation, is bringing regulators together to benefit everyone. So third, we've got you, Tom. You won the Institute's Rising Star Award, so you've clearly got a great future ahead. And you won for your work setting up an innovation hub at the Food Safety and Hygiene Watchdog, the FSA. So tell us more about this interesting work.
Absolutely. So the first thing I should probably say is that the Food Standards Agency is here to make sure food is safe and what it says it is. And that means that new food products need to go and undergo an assessment by us before they can be sold to the public. And this is a really complex process at the best of times. It involves a scientific safety assessment, as well as an analysis of all the other factors that might be relevant, like how the current law and regulation needs to apply to a new product, as well as consumer interests. And what we know is that consumers increasingly want access to a wider choice of foods, including those with potential to be more affordable or more sustainable or healthier, as well as products that might align to their personal beliefs or help us increase the UK's food security. And businesses are responding to these drivers by innovating and creating whole new types of foods. And this means the Food Standards Agency is increasingly seeing new and novel products that we have to regulate. So to adapt to this, we've launched a dedicated innovation policy hub. And what that's doing is it's bringing together all of our work on novel foods, on genetic technologies, and on innovative products, so that we can learn the lessons from across different innovations and scan across all those innovations to work out what's out there and what might be coming down the track. And we aim with this to ensure that we take a proportionate approach to regulating these products that keeps consumer safety as our priority.
Proportionate. I love that word. That's a word that I'm sure every single regulator holds close to their heart, because you're constantly balancing different demands from different groups and to try to do that in a proportionate way. So just give us an example of one of the things that, like maybe one of the issues that you've had to regulate, Tom, or one of the products that you've had come across your desk, just to give us a flavour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Flavors may be the right word. I don't know.
Pun intended. So one of the more sort of innovative areas that we're looking at currently are what we call cell-cultivated products. So these are basically like meat analogs. So this is meat that is essentially grown in a bioreactor, so in a lab rather than through animal slaughter. And these are grown in sort of tanks, a bit similar to how you brew beer, essentially. And that's quite challenging for us as a regulator because it's both a completely new type of product, but also a completely new type of production. And those two things together make it extremely novel. And so that's the kind of thing we're looking at and saying, well, what are the safety risks associated and how do we assess this to make sure if it's sold to the public that it is safe?
Amazing. Well, goodness me, I have to say that as a consumer, I'm just very glad that there's a regulator checking all of this stuff on my behalf, which is obviously the whole point. So great. We've heard now from all three of you some amazing work, really good examples of regulation in practice, all in the UK, underpinned by your work. And I'll just pick out three things that I've heard in what you've all said, actually. One of which is a focus on outcomes. What are you here to try to achieve? And try to make sure that the processes that you've put in place, all of you in your different areas, are working towards that goal. Second one, I think all of you also have drawn out the importance of evidence and analysis and looking at what you're finding in order to make assessments for regulatory decisions. And third, maybe about understanding your consumers, the users of the services that you're regulating, whether that's the food, obviously in the case of the FSA, or the patients you mentioned, Matt, in the NHS context. So these are the kinds of things that I've picked out. But Matt, just turning to you, listening to Mary and Tom and reflecting on your own work, what do you think are the features of good regulation that we've heard and that you're aware of in other sectors?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great to hear from others what we can learn across the sector. I definitely pick up on this point about a focus on what we're trying to achieve. So whether you talk about purpose or goals or clarity of outcomes, not just clarity of rules, which is really, really important within the regulatory space that everyone knows what the rules are and what the expectations are, but focusing on purpose is really important. So for us, in that case, it's not just about preventing harm, which is obviously our most fundamental and important responsibility, but it's about actively enabling something which is enormously valuable to citizens. That is that health research happens in the UK, and that's why the HRA talks about making it easy to do research that people can trust, to get that balance across those two ideas. Second point I'd make is that, and clearly that this certainly applies in our sector, I'm sure it applies in others, is that it's about working at the system level, understanding that any single regulator probably only sees a certain sort of sector of what the end user has to navigate and negotiate in order to get a product to market or deliver a service or whatever it might be. And finally, and I think this picks up on your point about listening to citizens or consumers or users, however you state it, and that's about trust. The most important and precious commodity we deal with is trust. Without trust, none of this works. For us, without trust, patients won't take part in research or allow their data to be used for research. Clinicians won't pay attention to the results of research, and companies and researchers won't do research in the UK. And so, for us, the most important characteristic that we're all trying to do is to build and maintain trust.
It's a really, really crucial thing for all of us in the regulatory world to try to do, so that people can recognise that the rules are there for everybody's benefit and comply where they can, obviously, and recognise that when a regulatory decision is made that they might disagree with, that it's done on the basis of evidence and the rules. So that's.
And it's the point you made earlier that, you said to Tom, I'm really glad that you exist and that you're worrying about these things on my behalf as a consumer. That's a really powerful message. We, in our world, that's why people are, should be happy to receive the treatments, the vaccines, the services that we provide in the UK because of the trustworthiness that regulators and other bodies build into the system.
Absolutely. We're all very, very privileged to live in a rules-based society, and the role that regulators play obviously is very important in that. Mary, from your perspective, maybe thinking about the area of information, what makes good regulation for you?
Well, for me, it's a few things really. Understanding the difficulties that are faced in the regulated communities that we serve, I'll say. Back to what I was saying earlier about people want to see themselves, but we want to understand the barriers that they are facing. I think giving regulatory certainty helps. Trying to show the law as a how-to and not a don't-do is really important.
Great point.
And one of our objectives is to empower responsible innovation and sustain economic growth. Now, we do that we've got a whole host of resources and different ways that we can do that. For example, we've got our website with a dedicated area for small businesses, which is my thing. Helpline and live chat. We've got the innovation advice, which is really great, because if an organisation has an idea, novel idea, they can get direct advice. No, it depends. We give in from that service direct advice about that tailored innovation. Similarly, the Sandbox enables businesses to work with the ICO to bring new ideas, novel on data testing out different data protection areas to market, and they can do that in a safe way. But we also write to organisations that are newly registered with Companies House, because a lot don't know about us, the requirements to even comply. So we write to any organisation that registers with Companies House within the first few months to say hi, basically, and point them to the resources that are available. So saying that we're here to help as a regulator is good regulations. I think that's our primary goal. We want to help people on their journey. And then we've also got breach data available that will help others learn from the mistakes of contemporaries, perhaps.
Amazing. Well, communication. I mean, we've done a whole podcast on the importance of communication to regulators, because obviously you need to convey to the people you're regulating and the people on whose behalf you're regulating what the rules are and how to comply with them. I loved your regulation being about how to, not don't do. That's a really great one. I'm going to steal that from you, if that's okay, Mary. And Tom, Mary talked about innovation, obviously. That's what you do too. So what are you looking for when you think about good regulation?
Well, I think firstly it's important to acknowledge that good regulation supports innovation. They shouldn't really be in tension. So in the case of food, consumers are not going to buy a new product unless they know it's safe. So strong regulation that's trusted by the public actually enables those innovations to be successful. And so sort of building on that, I guess there are three elements of good regulation for me that builds on what Matt and Mary have said. So I think firstly, like Matt, it's vital that we're clear as regulators what our regulation enables, and then make sure we're applying the regulation to achieve that aim. So for example, when it comes to innovation, we need regulations that are sufficiently flexible that they can accommodate new products that weren't even dreamt of when the law was first written. Secondly, it's important to understand, I think, what the public thinks about the product or service you're regulating and what they expect of us as regulators. So, for example, for the Food Standards Agency, we conduct regular public surveys to understand what consumers' views are about a whole host of topics. And that enables us to make sure that consumer interests basically stay at the heart of everything that we do. And then finally, as Mary touched on, I think it's also important to understand the perspective of those that are being regulated. So in our case, that's food businesses. And so direct engagement with them to understand the impacts of our regulation is vital. And that actually is really beneficial because it allows us to understand more about the questions or confusion they might have about regulation and help them to understand what's needed to make sure that a product is safe.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a very articulate, actually, summary of some of the challenges that we're all facing. So now looking ahead to the future, because obviously all regulators are facing challenges. I'm thinking not just about political and economic challenges, but regulatory challenges in your own sectors as well. Tom, you talked about the future and being flexible and kind of agile in the way that your regulator, the Food Standards Agency, responds to challenges. So Obviously, we're in an environment now where the government is promoting growth. I think, Mary, you mentioned that yourself. We all want to reduce administrative costs, but looking longer term, what are the challenges that you think regulators ought to be preparing for? Tom.
Absolutely. So I think for us, with the most innovative food products, we found that the assessment can be really challenging for both the business and the regulator. And that's often because we're talking about entirely new things where there's no precedent for how they should be regulated. And often what we have is the innovators themselves are either small startups or spin-outs from academia with little or no sort of experience in regulation. So a big challenge for us now and into the future is how we ensure that applicants and businesses understand what's required so that they can submit high quality regulatory applications. Because if they aren't able to, then that slows down the whole process for everyone. And obviously is really frustrating for the people we regulate. And obviously as a regulator, obviously very frustrating. And so I think that means for us, we're thinking about creatively about how we can communicate our regulations as accessibly as possible. And then complement that with some horizon scanning to understand the future trends and food trends that we're going to start seeing so that we as a regulator can prepare for them. So, for example, in the Food Standards Agency, we recently launched a regulatory sandbox of our own, looking at piloting a more collaborative, open approach with industry and academia to explore some of the complex questions posed by the most innovative products and sort of co-develop potential solutions. And that allows us to have a much richer evidence base and a much more open dialogue with all different parts of the sector and academia to help us do that. And then finally, longer term, we're obviously very conscious of the government's mission on economic growth as well. And we feel that the Food Standards Agency can play a sort of vital role in this whilst keeping consumers safe. And so we're really pleased to have recently secured some additional funding from the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology to support the research we're doing in the Innovation Hub, which is all about looking at the future, looking at the products that are coming down the line and how we can give innovators greater support in navigating the regulations, make the whole system more efficient, whilst making sure that safe products come to the market more quickly. And I think all of that together will mean the public can remain confident that foods, if they choose to eat them, are safe, and that the UK economy can benefit from the business investment, and so can the UK as a place to take early advantage of these potential technologies.
Excellent. Well, again, a lesson for us all: how regulation can help the economy grow, as well as keep people safe at the same time. I mean, it's a difficult balance, but it's great to hear that at the FSA you're trying to achieve exactly that in your sector. Sandboxes was something that Mary, you mentioned as well. So for you, looking ahead, thinking about the future, the experimentation that businesses, you mentioned new startups that you contact. What are the challenges that you see from the ICO perspective?
For me, it's whether it's Sandbox or anything else, it's actually a challenge is to raise the awareness of the existence of the ICO and the laws that we regulate. What we find with many small businesses is they actually think data protection doesn't apply to them. They only collect a few names, or they only have this, they only have that. But, obviously it applies to everyone. So it's getting that message out there that the ICO is here, but we're also here to help, and that data protection can be an enabler rather than a barrier. So, for example, getting it right early can help save small businesses time and money, whether that is reputational damage if a cyber breach happens where simple steps could have been taken to protect systems, or it's the personal impact to the people affected by a breach, but also that includes the employees or the owner of a small business. The amount of times our advice call line have people on a Friday afternoon really upset because they don't know what to do. And we can just give that advice and help them put their mind at rest that it's not the end of the world. We've got lots of resources, and quite often the problem isn't as big as they've imagined it to be, and we can help give practical steps to get that sorted. But by embedding it and getting it in early, having those data protection practices are good, and a lot of it is common sense. It really is. Having that early, it will grow with the business, and it'll set the business out in a good starting point to carry on with that journey, whether it's growth of the business, etc. So yeah, that I think is what I would say are
Fantastic.
the challenges.
Well, it's great. And it just shows again how important it is for each regulator to understand their sector and the challenges that they're facing. And you've highlighted there the importance in your world, Mary, of having an advice line that can reassure people about compliance and help them to do the right thing, which, as you say, in many cases is common sense. So that's great to hear. So coming to you finally, Matt, obviously listening to Tom and Mary and understanding the world that you work in as well, the future for regulators, the challenges that we're all facing. What do you think our listeners ought to be considering when they're thinking about the challenges to regulators, and how can professional bodies like the Institute of Regulation help?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm really interested in listening to Tom and Mary on this as well. As we record, you mentioned, Marcel, as we record this early 2025 in the UK, there is a whole programme of regulatory reform happening around us. And the narrative around that can often be challenging, and the environment is complex, kind of economically, socially, and politically, as you pointed out. But I also think this is our moment as a regulatory sector. I'm really proud of the work we do with our partners at the Health Research Authority, and I'm just so inspired by hearing what Tom and Mary have talked about today. We've got a real opportunity to bring regulation and the work we do closer to the public, and both Mary and Tom have talked about the importance of that. That allow us to have a greater impact on society, to deliver innovation in our own practice that's been hard to do in the past without the political backing. In terms of the sorts of things we need to, I think we need to regulate better in faster moving areas. And hearing Tom and Mary, their approaches to this has just been really interesting. And particularly areas where there is currently uncertain evidence. They're novel and innovative processes, or where public trust is nascent or fragile. So for us, that's topics like artificial intelligence or access to health data. I think we've got to move away from the rigid rules-based models of regulation towards more agile, collaborative, mission-driven approaches, which is exactly, I think, what Tom and Mary have been talking about. And in terms of the Institute and other bodies like yourself are playing a vital role in that. I think shifting the narrative from regulators being the problem to being part of the solution is really important. It's reframing the debate away from whether we have too much or too little regulation to what good regulation looks like. And that's what we've talked about today. And it's given us the space, like today, to learn from each other across the sector. I've certainly learned a lot from today's conversation. So I sort of sum up my thoughts are that regulatory reform is happening with or without us, but with the support of bodies like the Institute and working together as a profession, we have an opportunity to harness this moment for positive and lasting change that we can be even prouder in the future of our impact on society, whether that's keeping citizens safe or in economic growth. But most importantly, bring the public and therefore through that, our elected politicians with us every step of the way.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, you started by talking about collaboration within your world and how you brought together regulators and others. And now you've ended with talking about collaboration between regulators and how we can learn from each other. And obviously, that's something I'm passionately in favour of. And all of us here, I think, in our own worlds, regulating, whether it's food or information or health research, we're all keen to make sure we strike that right balance, that we think holistically, we draw on the evidence, and we learn from each other. It's all great stuff. And I'd love to carry on talking with you, but for those of you listening, do check out the various websites of the organisations that we've had here. That's Matt Westmore from the NHS Health Research Authority, Mary Jervis from the Information Commissioner's Office, and Tom Vincent from the Food Standards Agency. Thank you all very much. Please, everybody, check them out. Their work, it's all great. Thanks also to our sound engineer, Neil Bowerman from Bowerman Audio Productions. And thank you also to the sponsors of this year's Institute of Regulation Awards. That's PA Consulting and the Nous Group. I'm grateful for their support too. And thank you finally to those of you listening to this podcast. I hope you found the discussion interesting. Do let your colleagues know about it. I think there's some great learning here for other people as well. And tune into future episodes where we'll discuss other issues of interest to regulators. The next one's going to be on how to set up a regulator from scratch, with 2 guests talking about that. There's other material on the Institute's website, ioregulation.org. So thanks for listening to me, Martial Bou, at the Regulation Podcast. Good luck with your own regulatory challenges, and do stay in touch to help UK regulation become the best it can. Goodbye.